All right, ladies and gentlemen. So we are now officially, today's Tuesday. Gotham Knights comes out in 3 days. And I wanted to address this whole controversy that has arisen from the 30 frames per second announcement. I also got lit up on Twitter for weighing in on this whole debate. And a lot of people didn't like what I had to say, which is totally fair. And I completely understand everyone's perspective on this. And just so I can recap where I'm coming from. And again, this is just my opinion. I'm not saying that you should think this way. What I said that got me a lot of backlash on Twitter is just that I'm not going to let this negatively impact my experience of the game. You know, I've been waiting on the game for 7-8 years at this point. The last AAA DC superhero video game that came out was Batman Arkham Knight in 2015. It is now, by my calendar, 2022. And Arkham Knight was in 30 frames per second. This game is in 30 frames per second. Is it disappointing? Yes. One thing that I tweeted, though, that a lot of people didn't like. Anyway, to finish my point, my perspective is I'm not going to let this ruin my experience of the game because humans, in many ways, we don't even understand how our subconscious thoughts impact our conscious thoughts. And what I mean by that is that while you're playing the game in a couple of days, in the back of your mind, you'll be like, fucking 30 frames per second, this fucking thing. You know, you're going to be saying that internally, and you might not even know it. But you are resenting the game, and you are going into the game with a negative perception because internally you're whispering in your own head like, oh, this game sucks, you know, whatever. And I see that with a lot of people online, frankly, if I'm being honest. A lot of people on Twitter are livid, and I'm not saying that that's wrong because, yes, I'm comparing Arkham Knight to this game and how Arkham Knight had 30 frames per second. This game does come out on a new console gen 8 years later. I get it. It probably should be a 60 frames game. There's no question about it. It should have a performance mode like Spider-Man PS4. I understand all of that. The perspective I'm coming at it from, which a lot of people are upset with, but again, just my opinion, is I don't want to go into the game with any negative perceptions because what I'm most excited about is to play through the story of the game. And the story of the game is not impacted whether it's 30 or 60 frames. Another thing that I tweeted, though, was that I can't notice the difference between 30 and 60 frames, which is generally true. But then somebody had sent me a few tweet threads where there is a game that's in 30 frames and then the same game is in 60 frames. And okay, it's pretty obvious to tell what is 30 versus 60. And in film or in a YouTube video, like this video shot in 60 frames, I can tell that I'm filming in 60 frames versus 30. So I'm not an idiot, but I guess I'm just oblivious is what I'm saying. But to be honest, if they had not made this announcement, I wouldn't have even necessarily thought about it, whether it's 30 or 60 frames. Again, just me. There are people that are video game enthusiasts out there, which I would say I'm a video game enthusiast. I mean, I've been a gamer for many years, and obviously, you know, dedicated a big part of my life to this stuff. So I wouldn't say that I'm not a fan, but I guess there are more people that are more observant of these sort of things. But look, here's all I'm saying. Okay, the game comes out in 3 days. It's going to be in 30 frames. It's going to be. There's no amount of whining or complaining that we can do on Twitter that will undo the fact that the game's coming out in 30 frames. And as a result of that, we really have two choices. Or you, as an individual, have two choices. One, go into the game with all of this negative preconceptions of it and being annoyed about things that are not going to change. Or accept reality for what it is and just kind of go into the game and try to enjoy the story and play through the campaign and see if the story captures your attention and you find it to be engaging. You know, one thing that I pointed out that a lot of people are disagreeing with, but I don't see how you can, is that this game does have a lot of advantages going into it than Arkham Knight did or Arkham City. Because with Arkham City, or let's take Arkham Knight as an example, nobody was going into that game with negative thoughts. No, there was zero. And I remember this because I was a YouTuber before the game came out, and people are trying to say, oh, no, there's all this negative thought. I'm telling you, I remember there was hardly any negative pre-buzz about that game before it came out. All of the buzz was hype around who the Arkham Knight was and the story and that the Bat family was all playable and the dual takedowns and all of the things that they showed. They had an incredible marketing campaign. And the whole who is the Arkham Knight sort of secret was something that they played a lot into and generated a lot of positive buzz in the marketing. And overall, the game looked great. And in that sense, I guess you can say that some of the backlash for this game is more warranted in the sense that people have two eyes and they can see the gameplay, they can see the story, and they're a little concerned about some of the cutscenes and some of the gameplay. So I'm not saying that none of the pre-negative buzz is warranted for Gotham Knights. But what I am saying is that people don't necessarily realize how their negative preconceptions of the game before having even played it will impact their perception of the story and will negatively impact their overall review of the game. And again, 30 frames per second, that is a bummer. Again, not something I'm super passionate about or even observant about or even sophisticated enough, I guess, to notice or understand. It does seem weird, and this is a point that I've made repeatedly throughout the life cycle of the game, is that it does seem a bit bizarre that the game doesn't look quite as good as Arkham Knight did, even though that game came out 8 years ago. Again, the game's in 30 frames per second, which 8 years ago we were able to do that. Why are we not able to do 60 frames or performance mode or something like that this day and age? I get that, and there's also the other part of it that I'm not saying that you should not be negative about this. I'm really not, because I do think that some level of accountability is good. In other words, letting the devs know that this is a very big issue for fans might increase the likelihood of getting a performance mode down the line, maybe next year. An example of this most obviously being when it was announced that this game only has 2-player co-op and it's hard locked at dual play. There was some backlash around that, and now all of a sudden, boom, in November there's going to be 4-player co-op, which is wonderful. So sometimes that negative backlash actually is good. It's important. It increases accountability, and it lets the devs know what fans want. And ultimately that is important because fans are the customers, and without the fans, there is no game. There's also this, which I probably shouldn't get too far into, but there is this kind of clash between devs and game consumers. There's a lot of resentment that I see on Twitter. I'm not talking about the WB Games Montreal crew. I'm talking, generally speaking, across all of the game dev industry, because I'm connected with so many game devs, even though I'm not one. And I do see a lot of frustration that the game devs have towards fans, because the game devs over here saying, you have no idea how hard it is to make a video game. Of course, we want the game to be in 60 frames per second, but you guys are all, in some cases, making unreasonable expectations. And of course, they know so many things that we don't, right? They know that they wanted the game to be 60 frames, and let's say, hypothetically, WB shot down the budget to make that happen, or they didn't let WB expend the time frame, or they're saying, fans, the reason the game is coming out with 30 frames is because you've been whining at us for years to release the game already. And then when we rush to get the game done without maybe all the polish that we wanted to put on it, then you guys get mad for not having that polish. But which do you want? Do you want the game to come out sooner or later? And those are the sort of insights that a game dev has that sort of increases the amount of resentment that they have towards fans. And then fans, on the other hand, they are getting a little bit frustrated with the developers in some cases. And the thing that I do keep going back to, though, is that not every game can be The Last of Us or Grand Theft Auto. And that is something that I will kind of take the side of the devs of, again, not just WB Games Montreal, but just generally speaking, that I think a lot of fans do have expectations that every new game is going to be this incredible 60 frames per second, beautiful experience, 30 hours of story, no filler side missions, and overall just perhaps having unreasonable expectations to one extent or another. And my other thought on this is, hey, maybe it would have been possible for them to polish the game, to get it to 60 frames, performance mode, maybe beef up a few of the side missions that we don't love, or redo some of the cutscenes that we don't love, or a few things that we've all seen and maybe critiqued or not had great feedback on. But then do we really want to wait for this game to come out until 2023 or 2024? Again, the perspective that I have, which I'm not downplaying anyone's concerns or negativity, I understand it. Your thoughts are valid. My perspective is I'm just glad the game's coming out in 3 days. And yes, it's possible that some of these things could have been improved in delaying the game. But just like in film development, game development is very similar in the sense that you're never truly done. No filmmaker is ever happy when they put their film out into the world. No filmmaker says this movie is 100% perfect and I could not use 6 more months developing it. Or and it's the same thing with the video game. Of course they could use 6 months on the game. Of course they could. Of course they would like that. Of course they could do another year. And there still would be more to do after that year. But look, the game comes out in 3 days and I'm excited to play it. That's my message is I would hate for somebody to go into the game and already hate it before having played it. Again, understand, if you see the gameplay, say that's not for me. If you see the story and say, don't like those cutscenes, that's fine and well. But there are fans, and I guess that this message is more directed towards people that I've seen that have been fervent fans, and then all of a sudden are turning on the game because of the 30 frames thing. That to me is a little much. And again, you won't even know it. You won't even consciously know it. But as you're playing through the game, you will like it a bit less because of how much you hate it. And then there's kind of this social media phenomenon where people are getting so much engagement and likes and revenue in some cases from shitting on the game. Now listen, I have no vested interest in shilling for the game. Okay, I can't even get a review code for the game. People are saying a few days ago when I tweeted this that I'm being paid. I fucking wish I was getting paid to promote this game. I am gonna have to pay $70, and other of my YouTube friends, they already played through the whole game because they have a review code, and I would love a review code. Okay, but I can't even get that. So listen, when I tell you that I have no interest in shilling for the game, of course my reputation of how I even got a brand or following was in Arkham Knight. I was the most critical YouTuber of the season pass. And that's when I started to get traction on YouTube, is when I started to speak negatively about the season pass. And of course I would get more engagement and views and money by just shitting on the game and saying, 30 frames, boycott the game, thumbs up if you're boycotting the game, everybody tweet at the devs and whatever. But I'm just not going to do that because, look, it's been 8 years. 8 years since we've had a game comparable to what this game is. It's probably going to be another 8 years until we get another Bat Family game. So I'm going to do everything in my power to put aside the distractions. And frankly, that's why I've not been watching a lot of Gotham Knights YouTube videos. Like with Arkham Knight, I remember I watched everything. I watched all of my peers, all of my friends in the industry. I watched every single video they did. I haven't watched anything on Gotham Knights, hardly. And there's a couple of reasons for that, the foremost of which being what I'm talking about. But secondly, there's a lot of spoilers going around. A lot of spoilers. And that's really disappointing. Because, you know, as YouTubers, I do think that we have an obligation and responsibility to not spoil things for fans. I think that's really, really important. And it's been disappointing to see people post about these spoilers. And it's one thing if you don't have the spoiler, but I'm in the spoilers in the video, but in the title and thumbnail it clearly says click off now before you see. But I mean, I'm just seeing tweets and YouTube videos. Again, I'm clicking off like just before I have the chance to read them. And I don't want to know anything about this game. I don't want to know spoilers. I don't want even necessarily to have my brain nuked by 100 videos talking about how the game is going to suck and how 30 frames is terrible and W Montreal sucks and the game's going to be garbage. I just don't want to fill. I don't want to go into the experience with all that nonsense running around my head. And again, to call it nonsense is not entirely accurate. These are valid critiques and concerns that fans have that are completely valid. And again, I'm not here to invalidate anybody's opinions or experiences. But also, no one's actually experienced the game, right? We've just seen some gameplay, and we don't know. I mean, this could be the best Bat Family story ever told. It could be. I don't know. Again, I'm not going into it expecting that. But what I certainly know is that nobody will walk away from the game thinking that if all they're doing from the get-go, from the first scene, is they're already like, 30 frames, this sucks. You know, again, there's nothing we can do to change it. Part of this is just, reality is reality. You know, we must accept it for what it is. We can't always change things in life. And the frame rate being 30 frames per second is not something we're going to change unless you buy a PC. And I'm not buying one because I just got a new computer. I got a Mac. Look, this is the new MacBook Pro, the 14-inch. I love it. Can't run Gotham Knights on it. And I have an Xbox Series S, so my game is going to be running at like 12 frames a second, probably. But you know what? I'm still going to try to enjoy the game and the story. And I hope that you all can do the same as well. So thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell. I've got some Gotham Knights content coming your way very soon, obviously. We are 3 days away from launch, and let me know your thoughts on this video in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.